Welcome to MyPersonalFootballCoach.com's Soccer Player Development Podcast. Discover all the secrets, hints and tips about soccer player development and soccer coaching from some of the leading figures in world soccer. Here's your host, Saul Isaksson-Hurst.
Hi guys, welcome back to another show. This week's guest is Eduardo Oliveira. He is the U20 coach at Fluminense in Brazil. First connected with Eduardo when we were both presenting on a virtual conference a few months ago. Really interesting presentation. Was really keen to get him on board. Haven't had someone from Brazil on the podcast yet, so I'm always really excited to have people from new football cultures we haven't talked to yet, and also from Brazil, obviously, you know, one of the homes of football. This podcast won't disappoint. Sometimes, you know, I enjoy speaking to everybody, but sometimes you just speak to someone and you think, wow, this guy is top. Real top practitioner, really knows his stuff, had a really interesting career, but just came away thinking, wow, that was a real intriguing and interesting hour or so. Speaking about football, speaking about what goes on at Fluminense, one of the best clubs in Brazil. Got real emphasis on development. And obviously, you know, as we all know, Brazil continually developing top technical talent. So really interesting one. Really privileged that he agreed to come on and share his work and his really interesting journey. And I know this one's going to enjoy it. Just briefly want to talk about the MyPersonalFootballCoach Virtual Academy, going from strength to strength. We've got the third phase starting at the end of this month, at the end of June. So it's been a real privilege to have players from all around the world joining the MyPersonalFootballCoach Virtual Academy. Obviously, look, we provide weekly content for them, technical sessions from myself and tutorials from myself and ex-Premier League academy coaches and academy coaches from all around the world, and classroom sessions and feedback on their videos. They can upload their videos, so it's really unique. There's nothing like it in the world. So it's going from strength to strength. So if you're interested in the MyPersonalFootballCoach Virtual Academy, make sure you go to MyPersonalFootballCoach.com and go to the player section and then check out the Virtual Academy. But again, you know, we've got Joel Trello, who's the ex-Benfica coach, spent many years at Benfica. He's gonna deliver some stuff for our students. Obviously myself, Glenn Hicks, ex-Tottenham Hotspur Academy coach, Scotty Chickleday, forward coach, used to work at Tottenham as well, works individually a lot of players. Mark Campbell, who's the ex-assistant academy director at Wolverhampton Wanderers. Charlie Quigley, who's the S&C coach at Middlesbrough, delivering some S&C quality stuff. And obviously Steve Salas as well, who's our mindset specialist, who works for the English and Scottish FA, and unbelievable delivery, unbelievable sessions which he does for the players. So like I said, the next phase is starting at the end of the month, so it's a 3-month course, and like I said, it's really unique, but I'm really proud how that's developing. And again, at My Personal Football Coach, we're breaking new ground and doing things that never been done before. But without further ado, let's get into the show. So Eduardo Oliveira, welcome to the show.
Thank you, so it's a pleasure to be with you guys, and hopefully we can spend some good timing discussing about football and getting better as long as we develop our thoughts after the session.
Lovely. So it's just a brief outline of your playing and coaching journey up to this point, Eduardo.
Yeah, I was a youth player here in Brazil, and then when I turned 20 years old, I went to US, played college soccer there, and played 1 year semi-pro there. Then start taking my coaching and returned to Brazil and coached at the CBF with the women's national team as an assistant coach. Then I took a job at Botafogo, which was a men's job with a U14 head coach and U15 assistant coach. Then moved for a project called the Nike Academy at St. George's Park as a head of methodology. And back to Brazil and working with Fluminense for the past 4 years. Started as a head of methodology, and then 3 years ago I moved to a U17 and now U20 head coach.
Wow. So you've been around a bit. You've been doing a bit of traveling as well in your journey.
Yes.
Tell us about that then. Tell us about your first coaching role. Tell us about that. What that role was like when you were working with the women's team.
First of all, my first coaching role was in US. So
Right.
I did my master's degree in US, my bachelor's and my master's. And when I took my master's, I was assistant coach for my former head coach in college. So I took also a U12 and a U17 coaching job at a local club. And that was a very good challenge for me because I was a young coach, just finishing a playing career. And everything that I understood about coaching was based on the technical aspect of the game, because I'm Brazilian, and when I grew up here in Brazil, everything was about being good technical, good ball relationship, ball mastery, and understanding that if you have those tools, then you're going to be more successful on the game. So that was my main idea when I first started coaching in US. And then fitness was pretty big deal in US. So I started taking in consideration the physical aspect of the game also. And then when I got back to Brazil and I took the assistant coach position for the women's national team, I started taking more serious the tactical part of the game, trying to understand the game behaviors, the game logical, and all the aspects, So it's pretty much like I got everything being connected as I developed my coaching career, And nowadays, the main part of the game that I take in consideration is the psychosocial. Of course, I don't leave the other areas apart, but I understand that psychosocial is the main idea of the game nowadays.
So let's wind back a bit. I'm interested to know that those first few sessions you're doing with the youth players, you talked about the Brazilian way, the technique. What did your sessions look like? Give us an idea. I mean, obviously, were you just drawing from your experience as a player and when you were growing up and just replicating the sessions you had from your coaches?
Yeah, mainly that was the idea that I had because I've never taken a coaching course before. And I think the coaching courses, they will help you to organize your ideas. Being a Brazilian guy, and played youth in Brazil, I had many coaches and very good coaches that taught me a lot, but they didn't teach me a lot of the game. They taught me a lot of my personal actions inside the game. So they taught me about how to receive a ball, how to control it, how to dribble, how to shoot, so all the technical aspects I was well taught in Brazil. So when I became a coach, I pretty much reproduced that until I started taking my coaching licenses in Brazil in 2010. Then I start understanding how can I be more effective using those personal tools inside of other game context, So when I first started, I take the technical periodization pretty much. So talking about a week program, I pretty much split all the technical parts and I emphasize one or two in each day, trying to progress throughout the week. And that gave me very good results. I still use that nowadays. I still have those kind of ideas as a background, but I try to implement that inside of the game context.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before, didn't we? So obviously Brazil, traditionally known as, very much the technical street type players, everything's with the ball. But now you say maybe that, you've progressed into, more sort of game orientated stuff. Was that like a big part of the coaching licenses as it? I mean, is that generally a thing all over Brazil, or is that just something which is relatively new or just at Fluminense?
I mean, we've been discussing that in the coaching licenses here in Brazil a lot, because the new coaches, the young coaches like I am, we have access to different things all across the world. While 20 years ago, it was impossible to understand what the guys from Germany are doing or what the guys in Thailand are doing. Nowadays, it's pretty easy because we got the internet, we can communicate with people all over the world. So we've been studying other type of schools and how to develop coaching processes, So I remember that in 2010, I had my first idea of the tactical periodization from the Portuguese Vitor Frade. And that changed my mind in order to understand the game. And then 3 years ago, we started studying Paco Cerulo with the spaces of the game, So all the new literature and all the new ideas nowadays, it's pretty easy to get in touch. And I think I was lucky enough in order to understand the different thoughts, because I had the opportunity to work with Nike, and then I had a possibility to travel across the world and to visit all the big Nike clubs, for example, Barcelona, Man City, all these big clubs, and understand how they develop their own methodology, and that helped me in how to develop my own methodology and how to develop the club's methodology that I'm part with right now. So yes, we are discussing that in a national base in coaching licenses, and there's a lot of people understanding different types of views of the game, different types of methodology that people across the world are doing. So that helps us to keep updated and to try to keep our philosophy, keep our DNA, but understanding the modernity.
There's interesting, because a lot of people they think that stereotypical image of Brazil, that all the kids are playing in the street and everyone's a football, everyone's like comes to the academies as natural footballers. Is that a myth, or as someone once told me that maybe your academy systems are really well organized? You have a lot of development centers, actually pretty similar to England, where a lot of these young players are actually in your systems already at a young age and being coached already. Is that true?
I think for the initiation phase, for the foundation phase, like you guys say,
yeah,
it's a lot coming from natural talent. What I mean is, we are a big country. We have a very large shore, and people just play football here. The kids, they're 6, 7 years old, 9 years old. They played against 12, 15. So that helps them on their many tools and how to understand the game and also how to play the game, So mainly when these kids, they come to our academy, we use as a first stage, we use a method called futsal. Futsal is the main idea of us as they get into the academy. So until U13s, they play a lot of futsal, and also 7 aside, 8 aside, 9 aside. Whenever they become 14s, 15s, they emphasize more on the 11v11. So I believe that all the organization that we have now in our academies in Brazil, all the different curriculums that we develop throughout the country, that's going to be very impressive in 10 years from now, because yes, we do have that kind of branding, which is natural talent. And I truly believe that is natural talent that being developed in the streets. But once they get in a very good organized system in our academies, I think 10 years from now, we're going to be developing many more players than we are right now.
So what sort of stuff for example, at Fluminense in the foundation phase, as well as the futsal and the games, what do the training sessions look like? A typical training session.
We have a curriculum here that we develop it with what we call is activity category. So we have, for example, technical, unopposed, opposed, technical, small-sided game, large-sided game. So we emphasize much more than on the foundation phase. We emphasize a lot about the technical, opposed technical, and unopposed technical, and small-sided game. So that gives the good idea on ball mastery, on the relationship with the ball, and also with small spaces. As they go up, then we're going to be increasing the spaces, and we never leave the technical issue apart. As a U20 coach now, just to have an idea, day 1 and day 5 for me as a session organization is all about technique. It's all about the individual. I don't work in our team on day 1 and day 5. Day 2, day 3, and day 4, that's all about team organization. That's all about team tactics. But I take day 1 and day 5 to work with what we call their own DNA. I tell the guys that they have their own DNA wherever they go, because yes, they can play here in Brazil and they understand the tactics that we have here. If they go to England, if they go to Italy, they are going to understand the tactics. But whenever the ball gets on their feet, everybody needs to understand that you need to be good enough on the ball, you know. So occupying spaces throughout the field and understanding that game model, it's very important. But as we develop individuals and not teams here in our academy, we need to develop a very good technical and smart kid that can adapt himself to any type of market, you know. So we truly understand that and believe that we never can leave the technical activities alone. We need to have them part of our system, but of course, I only use 2 days while the foundation phase uses every day. So it's pretty much some type of that so that we can emphasize as we grow up. We emphasize more large sided game, for example, in a U20 than on the U11s. So, but we have a percentage of every type of activity in every single age group, so we can make sure they're being well developed in our DNA.
And so, how many players would you have in the under nines group, for example? How many players would you recruit for an under nines team or squad?
We have, with our under nines, is futsal and also with our academy. So they share time. They train twice futsal and twice here on the grass. We have a total of 25 kids in our roster for the U9s. So that gives us proper opportunity to play them in futsal and also play here at 7-a-side or 9-a-side, depending on the tournament that we're part of that.
And so those guys will play other professional clubs on the weekend in Rio and surrounding areas?
Yes, we have a state tournament here that pretty much lasts 6 months for this age group, the U11s, you know. And also have the state cup is divided on futsal and 7-a-side pretty much. So they play 1 week in futsal, the other week in 7-a-side, and we keep splitting like that so the players can have opportunity to play both experiences and have a good competition throughout the weekends.
And how do you approach something? And start with the foundation phase, and we'll come on to the older players in a minute. It's just interesting, especially my specialism within younger players. How do you approach something, for example, with the winning against development argument? How important is winning those competitive games, or how important is playing the right way, that sort of thing?
I think winning, it's a result of many actions that the players then gonna have. So we try to develop behaviors here in our academy. And of course, if we try to develop behaviors and they are well behaved, and what I mean by behaviors is on and off the field, it's talking about our values, developing those inside and outside the game. So if they are training like that and they are trying to win these sessions, for example, for a small study game, for sometimes a technical session, we put 3 groups, a passing drill that they need to go as quick as possible back and forth, whatever. We are developing their winning mentality, but that's not the main idea. The main idea is to develop good behaviors, But of course, the kids, they play in a game, they want to win, but we don't give many things for the winning group. We try to develop them, all the contents, and that's going to end up winning or not. But if they don't win, that's not the big issue for us. The big issue for us is to understand that they are being well developed. They are developing those behaviors that I just mentioned, and that they are improving from one session to the other, So winning is just part of the process, but it's not the whole process.
Interesting. And tell us a bit about your coaches, for example. How do they work? Do they work from a curriculum? Do you have a curriculum, or do they work under certain principles? What's that look like?
We have our whole curriculum here developed in our academy. We have our whole methodology developed in our academy. So what we usually say is we have a philosophy, Fluminense philosophy, how to develop players. We have a methodology. It is how we process that philosophy, and we trying to create a culture. When we create a culture, that philosophy is being practiced. That philosophy is being done in the grass. And those three words, we take that very seriously. So philosophy, methodology, and culture. And how we create culture is developing the good behaviors in a daily basis on and off the field. So in order to do that, we have those curriculums and our session structure and everything like that we developed together here at Fluminense 4 or 5 years ago, and the coaches are pretty happy with that. But we also understand that we're not just closed and don't take any good ideas. Yes, we do take good ideas. We keep studying, we keep trying to understand what people across the world are doing. So every year we have a week of review of our methodology, our curriculum. So every year we do some type of updated. It could be on how to plan a session. It could be what contents U12s need to develop. It could be how to evaluate our kids. So any type of process that we created for our methodology, we're being reviewed every year in order to keep them updated.
Interesting. And so you mentioned the young players, they do 2 futsal and then two sessions on the grass. What age does the frequency of training increase? When do they start training more than 4 times a week?
So we start training more when they develop 14 years old. 14 years old, they start training 3 times on the grass, 2 times on futsal. And then by 15, most of our players are not playing futsal anymore. If they're with us, because we have 5 times a week training session on the grass, so we emphasize the 11 aside now whenever they got U15. So it's pretty much until U15s, we still go futsal and grass and work in our academy. And then when they turn 15, they just work on the grass.
And for instance, in England, we have day release and kids come out of school for 1 day or several days and train at the club. Do you have day release there in Brazil?
No, we don't have that. We pretty much, the youngsters, they played in the afternoon. Our school here goes all until midday. It's pretty much 7 to noon. And then afterwards, they come to our club. They have lunch. They have some type of activity with the social services and the psychologist. And then they go to the grass. After the grass, they eat dinner and they go back home.
Interesting. And where do any players live on site, or where do you recruit your players from? Is it just the Rio area, or when do you start bringing players in from outside Rio?
We can bring players from outside Rio as young as they can be, but our approach is bring the family across and try to find a job for their parents. So we have players that, for example, we have a player called João Pedro playing for Watford in England. And he has been with us since 11 years old. He's from the São Paulo area. He was brought in with the family, so they lived right near to the club, because we don't believe that such a younger kid, they cannot live by their own. They need the family. They need to be around their family values, And by legislation here in Brazil, we only allow to host players in our hotel whenever they turn 14 years old. So we do have players from 14 all the way to 17 years old. Whenever they turn 18, they need to leave the hotel because they are over age pretty much, so they can rent their own place here. So we carry 14s all the way to 17s in our hotel, but every year our numbers are getting lower, because we're trying to get the players as young as possible, but bring the family across. So whenever they are 14, they don't leave their parents' house, because the parents live right across the club, right across the street. So we try to bring that family atmosphere, whenever they came to Rio, they came to our academy.
Interesting. And so you mentioned they play 7v7 and futsal, and does that go up to 9v9, does it, before they go into 11v11?
That's a big discussion here in Brazil nowadays. In our academy, yes, they come from futsal, 7 aside, 9 aside, and 11 aside. But we still have in Brazil a big discussion about the tournaments. Yet a lot of tournaments don't go from futsal to 7-a-side, 9-a-side, 11-a-side. We have still futsal and all the way to 11-a-side. So that's a good discussion here in Brazil in our coaching courses. But sometimes the people that develop the tournaments are not the federations, are not people specialized in football. It's just a sponsor or something like that. So they still believe that 11-year-old can play 11-a-side with the same goal that a professional guy can play, you know. So it's getting better in Brazil, but it's not yet a culture. We wish that's becoming a culture because our confederation, the National Confederation, it's going towards a regulation on the progressively increasing number of the players, you know, spaces of the game. So I hope in 5 years, we're going to have that in a proper curriculum, a national curriculum, because we do not have a national curriculum. We have a club curriculum. Many clubs here, they develop their club curriculums. We do have a project going on in the National Confederation on developing a national curriculum, and that's going to help a lot of these small clubs, you know, the recreational clubs, all these clubs that don't have a professional structure like our club does. That's going to help them with session planning, with curriculum, with contents to be developed, with tournaments, you know, designing. So I think that's what I thought at the beginning of our talking is 10 years from now, I think we're going to have a much better players being developed in Brazil.
Interesting. Yeah. So like, for instance, in England here, with the foundation phase, particularly Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham have very differing methodologies, very differing way they do things. Like I say, not necessarily very different to the FA also maybe, or different, not necessarily aligned. Is that the same in Brazil where the clubs have very strong individual identities and unique methodologies, or is it all, you know, more quite similar?
No, it's the same in England because the clubs are different. They have different philosophies. They have a different understanding of the game. They have different values. So the methodologies are different, you know, but I say that it's going towards game-related, more towards game-related activities than everything else, you know. But it's still, everyone has their own DNA. Everyone has their own way to do things. But it's game-orientated right now, you know. It's more towards game-oriented than just specific skills.
Yeah, interesting. So then tell us a bit then, with like, for instance, your work you're doing with the U20s there. Tell us what does your typical week look like?
My typical week, I have two typical weeks. State tournament, which is on Saturday, and national tournament that starts a month from now, which is Wednesday. So right now, I only play once a week. So I have 5-day training sessions. In a month from now, I'll start doing either one game a week, either 2 games a week. So whenever I have 1 game a week, I mainly do a recovery session on day 1, which is technique, which is a lot of technique, not shooting. We don't do any type of long distance because they're still recovering from the game. But we do a lot of ball mastering. We do a lot of receiving and passing. We do a lot of dribbling, you know. On day 2,
sorry, Eduardo, can you give us an example then of what that looks like? We all coaches listen to this. We all want some, you know, the good. We want to know what the drills look like.
Okay, I'll give you an idea about this past Monday. We did a diamond-shaped passing drill, receiving, passing, and dribbling drill. So we use a diamond shape because we're trying to create passing lanes in diagonals. You know, trying to create triangles and diamonds everywhere in the pitch. So we created that unopposed technical drill. Then we went to an opposed technical drill, was a 4v2 going to 2 small goals. So the team that had 4 players started with the ball. The team that had 2 players was defending. So the 4 players attacking 2 small goals, and the 2 players are defending and attacking 2 small goals. So whenever they steal the ball, they can go towards. So that gives us an idea to react quickly and close spaces whenever we lose the ball. So we're trying to create the diamond shape that we worked on the first activity, being unopposed, to a minimal opposition. And we call it as many as 2 players, because whenever you have 3 players playing as our opposition, we have a lot of tactical operation right now. You know what I mean? So with 2 players, the only tactical that we have is pressure and coverage. We still cannot format lines. We cannot cover too much room. So we're trying to use those 2 players as an increase of difficulty, an increase of complexity in order to put your technical that we just work on a post. And then after that, the players that played more than 70 minutes, it was done. They went to a recovery session with our exercise physiologist. And the other players, we play 11 aside. So we can understand how they played, because they didn't play on Saturday. So we give them a 40-minute 11-a-side game among the squad, and then the session was done. So we give them that type of approach on progressively increase the complexity. On day 2, we work on the concept of the week. So pretty much this week, we're working on possession and our behavior right after losing possession. So we do all the small-sided games. We don't do more than 7-a-side. We go from 3v3s, 4v3s, 5v3s, or whatever, all the way to 7v7. No more than 7v7, because we want them to repeat the actions many times. We want them to perceive what's going on around. We want them to make a good decision. And we want them to be able to act as quick as possible. So we make the pitch really small. We make the relationships really small. So we don't go from 2 sectors of the game. So let's say we play the back 4 against the 3 attackers, for example. We don't put midfielders, attackers, and defenders together on that day. We just either we do 1 sections, midfielders, either we do 2 sections, midfielders and attackers. So we try to keep it as small and as simple as possible. On Wednesday, on day 3, then we open up the field and we connect the dots. So if you work, for example, on Tuesday, defenders against midfielders and attackers, on Wednesday, we put all together. So we put the whole system. So we go from AV8 all the way to 11v11s. On Thursday, which is today, then we work on overloading. And we put them a lot in front of the goal, either to defend or either to attack. We work on the speed of play pretty much, on being precise and being effective inside the 18-yard box. And on Friday, which is day 5, that's a day to review. That's a day that we can pick any activity that we develop throughout the day 2, day 3, and day 4, and put the density of the actions pretty low, because we cannot have the players getting too tired. There is a game 24 hours after that session. So the main idea of that session is just to recall the main points of the week, the main points of each session, and have them remembering from the game. So it's pretty much that's a ordinary week that we have when we have a game on Saturday once a week.
This might sound like a stupid question, but just for particularly some of the less experienced coaches, how do you find it a challenge sometimes? Because when you're working with the small-sided stuff, then basically helping the players translate those ideas to the bigger picture, the 11v11. So if you're talking about your unit work there, people, the same, right? We're working in your 5v3s or whatever, and then saying, okay, right now, you almost got to imagine you're working on the 11v11 pitch. Then does that make sense? You understand what I'm trying to say here? Because when a lot of coaches will say, "Oh,
definitely.
I want to do everything in 11v11," because I suppose it's easier for the players to see the picture. But obviously, for the technical work, you need smaller stuff. So then, is that a bit of a challenge getting that to sort of come over, if you like?
Yeah, it's just thinking about the pedagogical progression from the simpler to the most complex stuff. and using your days of the week to build the ideas, just like to build a house. You know, we go for the foundation, it was just the technique. It's how to use the hammer, pretty much. Now we give them a situation, a small situation, which is, do we need a small nail or a big nail? You already know how to use the hammer, but do we need the small nail or big nail? It depends on the situation. Now we increase the scenario, and we're creating other tools than just a hammer. The player needs to understand what is going on across the whole field on Wednesday, for example. And do I need to use the hammer, or do I need to use other tool? You know, it's pretty much trying to start in the week with the simplest idea of the game. The simplest idea of the game is the individual. Is the individual technique, is the individual process inside himself or herself. And then you progress throughout the day 3. On day 4, you focus on the final third, on the initial third. And on day 5, you just review, because we have the test on Saturday. Thinking about school is starting to add, understanding the numbers on Monday, adding the numbers on Tuesday, multiplying the numbers on Wednesday, having the equation on Thursday, and then review on Friday in order to take the math test on Saturday. So if I make myself clear, I understand the building a training session and the building a week. It's just like building up a pedagogical process.
Yeah, I understand. As my former teacher, I understand that process. It makes perfect sense to me. Some would argue, as playing a devil's advocate, about having to have complexity all the time or chaos all the time. But what's your thoughts on those people who talk about that? You know, having those chaotic environments in every session.
I think everything is good as long as you know how much to use it. You know, I mean, game-oriented activities, I love them, but I hate them on Monday because I don't need them. On Monday, I need just relationship with the ball, and that's my opinion. You know, I respect anyone's opinion, but I believe the guy is just recovering for the game. He played an 11v11 game. He was fully stressed still. He's tired, and you want them to play on the chaos. He doesn't want to play in the chaos. He doesn't need that overload on their mind and on their body about game related. He needs to think about himself. He's trying to recover. So mainly what we do here, we do cold baths. We do gym workout, you know, to recover. So focus on the individual. So whenever we go to the grass, focus on the individual. So let's work on his passing, you know, right-footed, left-footed. Let's work on his receiving way. Open the hips, you know, controlling away from from the cone or whatever you have, you know, it doesn't matter. Mannequin, whatever. You know, so we understand that to start the week and to end the week, we need to focus on the individual. And throughout the week, we need to focus on the team tactics, you know. That is the amount of ingredients that we believe we're going to develop a better player, because we use our teams here as a platform to develop players. We don't use our teams here just to win championships. That's not our goal. Our goal is to get players in the first team. And my goal as a U20 head coach is to get players with the technical ability and the game understanding in order to play in Libertadores, in order to play for a national league in our first team. You know, they're not going to go as a team to the first team. I'm not going to have my 11 starters going to the first team at once. They go in at different times, they go in at different years, and they have to be well prepared as an individual to be there and give the proper result that the club expects them.
So you'll have your under 20s. Is that the final step before the first team?
We just created last year a U23. We're still understanding how that works, you know, but we do have our U23. But still in Brazil, the U20 is the last stage, mainly. We're trying to create something new here in Fluminense, and I think that's going to be well established in 3 years. But still, the main players in my team for now if they are performing pretty well, they go straight to the first team.
Right.
You know, they just jump. They just jump because they're 19s, they 18s, they 20, and they well prepared. So they go there and they give. Right now, our first team, they played the last game at Libertadores 2 nights ago. We have, from the starting lineup, we have 5 players that are still U20. They can play U20 still. Wow. Because they age related to the U20, but they are already on the first team starting. That's 4 players, sometimes 5.
How many players in the first team have come through the academy?
Probably, I don't have those numbers right now in front of me, but I would say 50 to 60%. That's our philosophy. And that's what I mean by philosophy is every club has their own philosophy. Fluminense has the philosophy of promoting players from the youth level to the professional level. Some clubs, they do a very good job in developing players, but they don't have that philosophy because they have too much money and they buy players all over the world. You know what I mean? So our philosophy is we need to have room for the youngsters to go up and play for the first team. And that's being done for the past 3 to 4 years, and we've been successful.
You talked a lot about your stuff on the grass. How important is the stuff off the grass in terms of analysis and those sorts of things? How much does that fit into your week?
It's the same thing, though. I mean, I understand the player as a human being. I understand the player as a person. So everything outside the grass reflects on the grass. So the lifestyle that the player has, how the player understand a video analysis, how the player understand a psychology session, how the player deals with the financial status nowadays, how the player, it's just life, you know. So we're trying to reproduce life situations inside the grass, you know, on the grass, actually, inside the field. So the players can understand and they practice our club values on the grass as a player and as a team.
Interesting. And I want to wind back a little bit now because you mentioned your previous role as head of methodology. So tell us about your first job. I think you said it was at Nike. How did that come about? And because obviously in England, we don't have this role within the clubs, most academies. I remember being at Ajax a few years ago and they talked about, they just installed a head of methodology. They got the idea from Barcelona. So tell us a little bit about that role. Firstly, how it came about, and then what exactly, is your remit?
The thing was, I was at Botafogo and I was a coach for the U14s. And then 1 year after I took the job, the directors called me and said, Eduardo, we want you to be director of coaching. And I was like, okay, but what type of coaching we want to have? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, what we're trying to develop here, how we're trying to develop here, who we're trying to develop here. We need a methodology. We need a game plan for developing players. It's just not like my ideas. It cannot be my ideas. So what we did is we put all the coaches together, all the fitness coaches together, everyone together in the room. And I gave them a framework, and I pretty much just ask questions, give them projects to develop, and 3 months, 6 months passed. I put it together, all the ideas, and I wrote what we called oriented documentation, which is just like a book, you know what I mean, which guide everyone in how to do things. But we still leave a space to a coach on ideas, to the coach on flavors, because we don't want the players to be robots and we don't want our coach to be robots. So that worked for 3 years in Botafogo. We ended up developing many players to the first team and also winning the U20 National League. Then after Botafogo, Nike had a program called the Nike Academy at St. George's Park, which was a U23 team that started at Loughborough University and then moved to St. George's Park, which was just like an idea of giving the Nike consumers an opportunity to play in an organized football. Okay, Jimmy Gilligan was the first head coach, if I'm not mistaken. Great guy, worked for the FA nowadays as a coaching instructor, and did a great job. And Nike, whenever the World Cup came to Brazil in 2014, Nike in 2013, prior to the Confederation Cup, got in touch with me and my brother. We work together. My brother is the coach for the U17 here at Fluminense also. They came together with us and they were like, okay, we want you guys to run some type of Nike Academy in Brazil because the World Cup is there. A lot of people is going to be there. We need a marketing project and that's going to be okay. So we created a small version of the Nike Academy. We didn't use the facilities that St. George's Park has. We just renew a pitch at a public park. And I had open sessions for 8 weeks. And we selected the best players to have a program that lasts 12 weeks. So we train 3 times a week for 12 weeks. And then the Nike Academy program at St. George's Park, they have an approach that was bring the best players for the different countries to the Nike Academy in St. George's Park that we're going to select them. But they didn't have any training in Argentina, in Moscow, in whatever. So our case was like, okay, we have the main idea in England and we have a small version in Brazil. Why we don't reproduce that small version in Brazil in the different territories? Because then we are developing players and we give them the consumers much more opportunity than just in England. So when we gave them the idea, there was a Brazilian guy that was the head football guy at Nike, Fabio Tambosi, and he was just in love with the idea, and he hired me and my brother to be the head of methodology to develop those ideas throughout the road. So we give a football summit at St. George's Park to bring everyone in, the coaches, and then we start doing technical visits. So I went to Moscow, I went to Tokyo, I went to Paris, I went to Buenos Aires. I went to different territories for 2 years in order to develop that methodology and understand how they are developed. So the training structure, the framework was the same, but the good thing was the Italians, they understood with their flavor. The Argentinians, they have a different flavor. And for me, as I had a methodology, I was learning much more than teaching. I didn't taught anything. I didn't teach anything. I was just learning because I gave them the framework and they were very creative with the framework. And what happened is with the Nike Academy project at St. George's Park, we started getting much better players because they are being well developed in their territories. And that lasted until 2017, if I'm not mistaken. But Nike just folded the program because marketing strategy or whatever, you know what I mean? But that gives me a very good experience on how to develop methodology because I don't believe the methodology is mine. The methodology needs to be our methodology. So my job is to understand and create a diagnosis at first, and then to bring everyone in and get the brainstorming going on, you know, get a project developed by a group of coaches, getting another project developed by a different group of coaches, and then afterwards brought everything together, write it down a book, and give them back. And every year, get everybody together, what's working, what's not working, and update it. That's what we do here at Fluminense. That's what we do at Nike Academy, and I truly believe on that process.
So I'm interested then. So like, if you were to sum it up, what would be in that book? So it's the idea, it's the philosophy. So in terms of your game model, how you want to play, how deep does it go? Is it talking about the training sessions? What are they looking like? Is it your curriculum? What exactly is in that methodology?
It's pretty much that. It's the outline is starting with the philosophy, you know, what we're doing here, why we're doing here, you know, what we're going to value here, you know, what we're trying to develop here as a team, as individual, developing a curriculum because we have different age groups talking about Fluminense, you know, how to progressively develop those players, how much competition we need, how much training sessions we need, you know, what type of internships we're going to have. We have a program called the internship program, which is on Monday, I always take 3 guys from the U17s in my group. So they train with the U20s. In my case, every week, the U23s take 5 players from my group. And every week, the first team takes 3 players from the U23s, and that keeps going from U8s all the way to the professional rankings. That gives us an idea and an approach on how those youngsters are being developed, give them a proper challenge. So it's just like that. But the main idea is, step 1, what to develop. Step 2, how to develop. Step 3, why we're developing that. And why we're developing that, it's how we control the process. Evaluation, pedagogical control of the training session, physical control of the training session. It's all about controlling your process. And step 4 is who we're delivering the program. So in our case right now is club DNA, step 1, developing environment, step 2, controlling tools, step 3, and curriculum development, step 4. So if we create that cycle and we keep following that cycle, then we have a methodology, then we have a philosophy, then we have a culture, and that's what we're doing here at Fluminense.
I suppose it's interesting. You mentioned that word culture before. I suppose it just gets everything down on paper, so everybody's on the same page, as you call it. I suppose that's what's important, right? Everyone's is one unit working together. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the idea. The idea is everyone needs to swim towards that lane right there. We need to go forward, but sometimes you like to swim butterflies. Sometimes I like to swim backstrokes. It doesn't matter, you have your own style as a coach, but we all go in that direction. We're not swimming on the ocean that you go right, I go left, and we all swimming, but we go in different directions. No, we all want to coach football, but we need to have a direction. But you have your style, I have my style, and we need to respect that.
What about yourself, Eduardo? What's your own ambitions in the game?
I want to go to the professional rankings. I'm getting prepared myself to that, and I have the ambition. I want to be a head coach of Brazilian national team one time in a World Cup.
Wow.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that, but that's my ambition, and I'm doing the best I can do to develop my coaching and my personal lifestyle in order to pursue that. I don't know when, I don't know if I can do that, but I'm pretty positive that I can develop myself and pursue my career, step by step.
And how do you do that? How do you develop yourself? You talked about, having lots of things accessible with the periodization stuff. How do you continue to develop yourself and keep yourself at the top end of the game?
First of all, trying to be involved with stuff like what we're doing now, because as you ask me questions, I need to think about on responding to you, and also taking your considerations in order to get a better idea of my coaching style, but also trying to be involved with different federations. I had experiences going to St. George's Park and work for the FA. I had experiences working for our confederation here. I'm always taking courses with different federations, Argentinians and Dutch and whatever, just to be involved with the game, just to be listening to different people, trying to understand what the big time coaches done on their times, and trying to learn from them and trying to progress and understand the game changed. And we need to take everything in the past in consideration, but we need to think forward, because I want to coach the players that are going to play 5 years from now. So I cannot just coach what the game is being played now. I got to imagine what the game is going to be in 5 years from now. So just trying to keep myself updated, try to be humble in order to understand that I don't know anything. I just believe what I'm doing, but I need to learn every day and to get better every day.
Interesting. And what advice would you give to a young aspiring coach who wants to have a career in the game like yourself?
My main advice is to be involved with the game as much as you can. Either organize practice, either pick up games, either coaching courses. You need to have football as a lifestyle. Football is not just a sport for me. Football it's everything for me. It's my family. It's all about football. I mean, I have 2 daughters, a wife, and they understand that football is my life. But I still have time for them. I'm not like a workaholic type of coach. I try to separate a little bit, but They know that I'm going to watch a football game in the TV. They know that I'm going to be at work early. They know that I love this. And I want to be involved with the people that have better experience or more experience than I do, So for the starting coaching, for the guys that are just starting their career, is being involved with the game. Make football your lifestyle. I think that's the best advice I can give.
And tell us a bit about that. How do you balance that work life, lifestyle relationship thing? How much time do you spend at home at work? How much time do you spend at home with the family?
For example, right now it's 11:20. My training session is at 3 today. I got in at 10:30 because I was late. Usually I got in a little earlier. I'm probably going to leave the club around 6, 7 p.m. today. So whenever I get home, that's time for my daughters. I'm going to put them to sleep. I'm going to have dinner with them. If people call me, I'll hold them. You know what I mean? But I try to do I try to manage my time as much as I can in order to be able to do everything I want in my life. I still want to go on Sunday, if I have a day off, to the beach with my daughters and spend the whole morning and not thinking about football right now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Then on Monday, I'm in and I'm full speed on football, So trying to balance that is not easy, but I think priorities in your life throughout every day needs to be made in order to have a social, a personal, and a work life.
And just finally, what's your thoughts on Brazilian football as a whole? Maybe not been as successful recently as they have been in the past. What's your thoughts on that in terms of where Brazilian football is at the moment?
I think we are reorganizing everything here in Brazil. We had very, very large success until 2002, 2006. If you think about it, if you go to the FIFA tournaments, I'm talking about the men's side, not the women's side. The women's side still have a lot to do, and they're doing. But the men's side, we had many titles as U17s, U20s. The men's side, we won 5 World Cups until 2002. And then in 2005, we won Confederation Cup, beating Germany and Argentina badly. We went to Germany 2006 being the best team, but we didn't get the result. And after that, I think everyone kept themselves progressing, thinking about how to get better. And we started in a transitional phase. And it's taken us time to understand which way we're going. And I think right now we have a strong thought about coaching developing. That's the main idea. I mean, our coaching course, it was established in 2009, so it's pretty young. While Germany has been having coaching courses since the 1960s. England has coaching courses since then. Either US has coaching course longer than we have. So starting with developing our coaching, I think we're gonna have a better philosophy. We're gonna have a better way to develop our players, and we're gonna have a better league. Our league also suffers economically because the big European clubs, they can come here and buy our kids when they are 17s now, because economically they're much stronger than us. So we don't have our first division with our best players. Our best players are already in Europe and mainly US. US started buying the youngsters here when they're 18, just to have an idea, because dollars and euros is much stronger than real, which is our money here. So I think this is a challenge for us, because we need to get a competitive league with Brazilian players being able to have good performances. But I think we're in a way to develop those things. People are getting together here in Brazil. We are a continental sized country, and that's a challenge for us. We're still a third world country. We're not as developed as Europeans and America, but we're trying to get as much organized as a Brazilian society can be in order to organize our football system. And talking about football system is not just what we do on the grass. It's from tournaments to regulations to training sessions to developing kids, everything else, So we are on the process, and I think if we keep on that way, again, 10 years from now, I think we're going to be much stronger. Maybe we can go back to being the top country in the world on football.
Eduardo, thanks very much, mate. It's been fantastic.
Thanks a lot. I mean, it's a pleasure to be with you, and to be talking with your audience. I hope you guys enjoy, and I'm always open to interactions like that. And thank you, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks for tuning in to the MyPersonalFootballCoach.com Soccer Player Development Podcast. MyPersonalFootballCoach.com's Dynamic Ball Mastery Program is the world's leading online individual technical training program, proven and developed at the highest level in the English Premier League. Sign up now to train like the pros and take your game to the next level. Master the ball, master the game.